Welcome to You Spy Discover, our March session. Hi, Pippa. Hello, hi, Rachel. There's a Palminda. Andrew, I can see. See Rich, can Steve Acklam. Steve Acklam, hello. Not seen you for a little while. How are you? And welcome. Hi, JB. So, those of you who've never been to our You Spy Discover, let me explain what we do here. So once a month, we come on to a webinar around about 45, 50 minutes. So at lunchtime, so hopefully won't take up too much of your time. And just to share some of the models, some of the processes, and some of the leaders, which I'll explain in a minute, some of the leaders that we work with, to tell some stories about how they have worked together to develop a particular leadership topic, actually, particular leadership. Sometimes it's a commercial, sometimes other leadership areas. So today we are going to be together to talk about a 4-step process for leading growth that we've been using at USpy for about 10 years now, which actually you can use to lead anything, anybody, or any number of people. I use it for myself. I use it with my daughters, and we absolutely use it with our clients, and our clients use it as well. So I'm really hoping that you will be able to come out of today with a way that you might be able to try using this process with yourself or one of your team members or your overall team, so that you can, give it a go. Give it a go. The process is this: vision, mobilize, develop, enable. Vision, mobilize, develop, and enable. That's it. You can go now. No. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you through this little document here. Chris is going to pop in the chat towards the end of the webinar so that you can print that off and use if you find it useful. I hope you do. I really hope you do. Okay, so here is how it's going to work. We are going to have approximately 5-10 minutes with 3 leaders who I will introduce to you as we go along. And each of those leaders is going to describe a story about how they have used that element of the 4-step process: vision, mobilize, and develop. And I'm going to finish up with enable. How they've used that element of the 4-step process in real life with real people, with real brands. So that's what we're going to do. Please do feel free to use the chat. If you've got any thoughts or any discussion that you'd like to have, then please do use the chat. We'll be watching that chat. I'm going to ask Pippa to manage that chat to make sure that that is managed. If you would like to introduce yourself to the rest of the people on the call, feel free. If you'd rather not, absolutely fine. If you are able to pop your videos on so that we know that you're there, that would be even better. Understandably, it is lunchtime, so if you are ploughing your way through a panini, then we will totally understand. Okay, so let me start with the story. 9 years ago, we worked with a business in hospitality called Big Bus Tours. And Big Bus Tours, I don't know whether you might have, if those of you who've got your videos on, put your hand up, heard of Big Bus Tours. They are a hop-on, hop-off bus tour company that operates around the world in a number of cities. And at that time, they operated in 18 different cities. And we were lucky enough to be working with them on their sales, with their sales teams, to enable them to be able to I don't know whether you've ever been on any of those bus tours, but the way they sell has been quite aggressive. Actually, it was a little bit like one bus tour, right? Buy a bus tour. And actually, they did not want to be seen like that. They actually wanted to be able to connect in an appropriate way with their customers and be able to really develop a relationship, which would mean that in those 18 cities, people, let's say they come to London, they could go to, they might want to go to Paris, or they might want to go to Dubai or Singapore, that they actually would be able to to know and trust and respect that bus tour company all over the world. So that's what we did. And as during the course of the training workshops that we were running, it became clear as we worked with the leadership team that actually they didn't really have a clear view of success, of where they wanted to be. And they've got some business and commercial strategies, but actually something that they could really grasp hold of, they didn't have. So as we go through the webinar today, I'm going to share that story with you as kind of a red thread, and yeah, see what you think. So let's start with the first of those stages, which is visioning. I always like to say that visioning is not just for the reception of a big corporate building. Visioning, although it does happen, right? Visioning is actually not just for Christmas, and not just for a march away day, and not just for kind of once in a while an appraisal. For me, visioning is every single day creating that vision of success and expectations, that vision of what good looks like. And it could be in terms of behavior as much as in terms of a strategy. All of those things that make sure that actually people are really, really clear and explicit about what good looks like around here. So what did Big Bus Tours do? As part of the discussions with the leadership team, as I say, one of the things was the then CEO at the time said, actually, do you know what? I think we could do with a vision. I absolutely agreed with him. And they created a vision. They spent some time and created a vision in consultation with some of the sales teams. And they created a vision. And this is the vision that they created. To be the number one thing to do in every world famous city. To be the number one thing to do in every world famous city. Now, just in the chat, I would like you to just give me, and bear in mind, you know what hop on, hop off bus is, and you've heard that vision to be the number one thing to do. If you worked for Big Bus, just give me a couple of things you might do as a result of hearing that vision. What would you be doing? What sorts of things to be number one if you were in a hop on, hop off bus tour? Just what sort of thing might you do? Yeah, be friendly. Review competitors to make sure that they were whether they were any better than you. Certainly get some training, which was kind of already in. So yeah, look professional. Raise awareness of the brand. Influence customers to post on Trivia for definite. Deliver what's promised. Thank you. Yeah, and and the drivers who were driving the buses, and the people who were cleaning the buses, and the people who were deciding what kind of buses and what kind of colours they should have on the back of the bus on the buses. They really, Steve, really understand the city and be able to inspire and motivate tourists as they come to experience the city. And 9 years later, in the last few weeks, we have been privileged to help to refresh some of the work that was done 9 years later. And I can tell you now that every single individual who we've worked with, and we've worked with 45 individuals in the last few weeks, every single individual knows this vision and knows how to work towards achieving it. They are mobilized, they are developed, and they are absolutely enabled. I'll tell you some of the things they've done to refresh, because it kind of goes around a bit of a circle. Once you're enabled, you might want to improve. And I'll tell you some of the things that they've done to work towards even further towards that vision. Although I will tell you the results. And despite COVID, despite being absolutely catastrophically hit by COVID, being a tourist industry in cities, they are now 28 cities in the world, and they are the number one thing to do in 18 of those. And they got a little bit of work in some of the new ones, but actually it's been a massive success. And yeah, that's the value of a really clear vision that everybody can get hold of. The importance of purpose, the importance of having clarity in what we're trying to achieve. And really often we find that your experience, please do share in the chat, that if we're not clear on what the vision is, it's difficult to be great, you know? It's difficult to be great because we don't really know what we do, and we tend to get on with our day jobs, and actually could be so much better by sharing that purpose. So I'm going to hand over now to Steve Jenkins. Steve Jenkins I met when he was at Birdseye Foods, and he was there for a very long time, and he's very recently become the client leadership director for the IGD. I'm going to let him introduce himself. Thank you, Steve, and to tell us a story about how you, Steve, created vision and clarity in one of your businesses. Steve.
Thanks so much, Amanda. I hope you can all hear me. Just on that, I've just actually was on the big bus tour in Rome last weekend as well. Yeah, so
what was it like?
I went on to that. It was great, and the reason why I went to the big bus tour is because it wasn't a hard sell of a leaflet thrown down your throat. To be fair, so it was a little bit different, and that's why we decided to go on the big bus tour in Rome and not just with other competitors. But on to myself. Yeah, so feed that one back, Amanda. That's the direct feedback from Rome. To myself, yes, I'm Steve Jenkins. I'm currently head of client leadership at the IGD, but I've only been there for 2 weeks. Prior to that, I spent over 10 years at Birdseye, which is part of Nomad Foods Europe, and that's where I'm going to be telling a story in terms of my leadership there. So I was business unit director across a number of grocery customers, and my story is going to come from probably about 6 or 7 years ago now, when I was actually appointed as Tesco account director, and how we reshaped our business within Tesco. So I got appointed to the role of Tesco account director, which actually really sounds really great. You've got a really good promotion, Steve. Here's how it works for you. You're doing really well in your career. However, I would caveat that with the Advantage Survey's report, just for everyone on the call, that retailers fill in about their suppliers in a certain category, in a certain area in the store that they work in. So Birdseye at that time were voted 12 out of 12. So the worst supplier that was dealing with Tesco within the frozen industry was Birdseye. We'd just had 6 years of year-on-year decline. We'd had really low engagement with the buy-in and the Tesco team. We had no success within new product development. Even the size of Tesco, it wasn't even Nomad's biggest customer. That was overtaken by Asda. And actually, we had no trust in the Tesco team, but probably more challenging was we had no trust for the Tesco team. So it was a real internal sell that we had to make as well. So that's the job I got offered. And yes, I did accept it. But before we could start building our vision in terms of turning this business and how do we move it around, we really need to be clear on the current reality. What actually was happening, what was driving those 4 or 5 points that I referenced to higher. So what did? We actually asked Tesco. I went into Tesco and said what was good, what was bad, what do we need changing? And then the final question I left them with was, knowing that I also had business targets to hit, what would they do if they had my job? I was in there for over 2.5 hours. What I then did with this information we could work through was what we needed to do to turn around our performance within Tesco. So what I did on the back of that is, as a team, not me, it wasn't my decision, it wasn't my vision. We brought that information back and we started to work together as a team. This is important to bring the team with you and really live it. So we've created a vision to actually deliver growth through becoming or being Tesco's trusted frozen partner. So that's how we really wanted to be. So we lost a lot of trust in Tesco for different reasons. But we then went through our values. What do we really want to be seen internally and externally within Tesco? So the values we wanted was honesty, trust, respect, commitment. We wanted to be knowledgeable about both ourselves and Tesco. And we also, as a team, wanted to be accountable both internally and externally. So the strategy, the internal sell, was as much about that as the external one. So we could really challenge the status quo. We had to build a bigger contact strategy within Tesco. We always had to be visible. We wanted to be cross-functional. We wanted to understand the Tesco business and strategy in greater depth. Actually, what really was it that made them tick? What was really important to them? And also, we wanted our brand to be heard and identify the role that that brand could have been playing for Tesco. So we set ourselves, putting ourselves some objectives within our team. And one of them was around buyer engagement and trust. We wanted to make every minute count that we had with our buyers. We really wanted to understand what our buyers were like. One of my buyers had him for about 18 months to 20 months, hated PowerPoint. So I had to work through a whole strategy with him and talking without the use of PowerPoint for about 18 months. Try it, it's brilliant. It really engages the mind to really drive that forward as well. So I recommend that. We had to talk about promotional feature space and talk in the Tesco language. We actually use what products we could work for both our businesses. But most of all, and I think this is what changed the dialogue with Tesco, is about that honesty and trust. We would be proactive on delivering messages, whether that message be good, whether that message be bad, whether that message be indifferent. Of course, different the content matrices, but we'd offer solutions to them, and we had to deliver what we said we would do. And that was the biggest opportunity we had there to really deliver in that trust. But how does that move? Oh, somebody question? No. So and then we put everyone expectations, everybody within the team, not just my direct team, but my wider team that focused on Tesco. Everyone knew the role and the challenge each other to deliver. So I didn't police it. This was being policed by the team that worked in it because they had a pride in what they wanted to deliver. We made it a real cross-functional effort. So marketing will talk to buyers outside of Tesco, outside of our sales involvement. We'll have supply chain have an open, honest conversations. We'll be open, honest, and deliver the conversation that we needed to do for Tesco to drive that performance. But one of the things we looked at with the team was we had a team of a few people, but where was the key competencies? Who looked after what? What was the individual strengths, and how were people looking to develop their careers? So we understood our individual strengths. We went through a whole phase of going, what was the people best at? What were they struggling with? What was their development areas? And we really challenged them on what they could do to utilize that to get the best results. So we put the best person with building that relationship to build a relationship. We did the best person to do the administration, the support work, to do the support work. So we could really build that and develop the confidence to have those confident conversations and be on the front foot and be really feeling about themselves. So how did it achieve? Actually, we moved the dial. These are the results that moved the dial. We moved from number 12 out of 12 to number 3 in the Advantage Group survey ranking. We then continued 6 years of consecutive growth within Tesco. We even lapped COVID as we move forward. We moved Tesco to clear number 1 in Nomad, and not just in the Bird's Eye Group and the total Nomad Group. Tesco became the number 1 customer. We became supply chain champion of the year, and we didn't have the best service record that year. We became supply chain champion. What we did, we gave them the honest conversations and were open, honest, and transparent with Tesco. We launched collaborated new product development, and we involved Tesco in our brand changes to make it move forward. And the best thing of all for myself is we actually won 2 years after taking over Customer Champion of the Year in Tesco. So our Bird's Eye team moved from being 12 out of 12 2 years later to actually leading and becoming Customer Champion of the Year for that frozen category and also the chilled category as well. And that was all set about, from similar to what Amanda's going to take us through now, setting a clear vision, really understanding what we wanted to achieve, be open and honest with each other, and really being accountable and understanding where we needed to achieve and what we wanted to be there, and having the laser focused on that vision and on that mission that we want to achieve.
That's amazing. Thank you. Steve, thank you very much for taking the time to plan that out as well. Because actually, what you've done brilliantly there is gone through all my list over here of things to include in that visioning stage, which is brilliant. And I tell you what, asking your customer, observing and assessing what your customer needs from a vision perspective, so that it can be a joint vision, is such a brilliant piece of advice for people. Tell me, how did you take the people with you? The loads of people in Bird's Eye, but also, a big team of people at Tesco as well. How did that work, taking the actual people with you?
It was being honest, Amanda. It was showing internally. We had to tell them what Tesco thought of us internally was. They weren't easy conversations to have across the marketing team or anyone else, but it was about how we brought them together. And from a Tesco point of view, it was showing that actually we were interested in their business. I think prior to going on to that, I don't think Tesco felt the love, if I'm being honest. They felt that it was that element, it was Bird's Eye way or no way. We tried to change that status quo. And it's like anything, you get that momentum as you go forward and people want to jump on the journey. So internal was a hard battle. we got through that first stage and we started to build people on the journey. And then 2 or 3 years later, as I mentioned in the thing, we launched co-collaborated MPD. This is because the marketing team wanted part of them. They wanted part of the pie.
Oh,
They wanted
that's
to be, they want to be involved in it. And it's like, actually, we now see the benefits of working with you and where we can move it. You can enable us to hit our numbers and our targets with a strong collaborated Tesco on board.
so it actually brought people within Birdseye on board with this joint vision with Tesco.
Yes.
They wanted to launch their brands with you and
Yeah.
Tesco.
And
That,
that's what we tried to set out when we set out the vision for it. It was becoming Tesco's honest and trusted branded partner. That was what it was. It was just an internal and external. He's trying to build that relationship back in that had obviously um, changed over the time. But yeah,
just
it was good.
just tell me a bit more about the competencies that you had to change or the competency you had to kind of build higher um, to deliver
Yeah.
the vision.
So the competency, what we really went through is understand what our strengths and weaknesses or development areas were. So it wasn't we're going to go through a whole training mission. We didn't have time to go through a whole training program. But what we did is we took the team in board, and we knew the strengths and development areas of those people. What we
Mm.
then did is we really put the strong people on what they're strong at, and a development plan for those to learn from others. And it was making sure that when we recruited a balanced team. It wasn't getting the same person who was
Yeah.
really good. It wasn't getting, if you go back to Insight Colors, it wasn't getting everyone blue red. It was actually how do we get the people in from the green, yellow, blue, red. So actually we mirrored the whole team to really deliver in what we needed to do. And then we put plans in place for them to build their capability within themselves. So it was a lot of the time it was about confidence to deliver. A lot of the time um, it was their own structure that they hadn't done. So if I take it from Haley's point of view, Haley would have been very good at relationship building. She'd been very good at looking at a problem and solving that problem. Hopefully she's not on the call, so apologies if you are, Haley. But the admin side of it probably wasn't where her strength was, but her strength was really with focusing on the customer. So we put Haley in front of the customer. Abdi at the time was more focused on doing admin point of view, and he wasn't as strong being a customer. It wasn't to say we didn't put him in there, but we made sure that Abdi was really strong, so it was a right first time attitude to our admin paperwork, which built that trust and honest respect for Tesco. But we made sure that the development plans incorporated the other areas. So we gave Tesco what they wanted, and we also gave the team what they enjoyed doing, and therefore they gave more passion, more pride, more commitment to the role because they were enjoying what they were doing.
That's brilliant. That's exactly what Big Boss have done as well. Is that when you know what the vision that you're aiming for, then you kind of you slide in and mobilize, which we're going to move on to next.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Steve,
no
for
problems at all.
sharing.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. If anybody's got any questions for Steve, please feel free. Steve's going to stay on, and if you've got any questions, please feel free to share those. I'm going to ask you a little question now before we move on to mobilizing, which is our second stage. If visioning is the, hang on, that side, visioning is the get clear part of this 4-step leadership process, the get clear process. So you can see next to me, there are 6 elements that we've put down around get clear, that visioning section. If you choose to, obviously no obligation, but if you choose to, I'd like you just give yourself a mark out of 6, tick or not tick, do you think you're really, really clear in your business? And additional question, if you choose to, it'd be useful for us to just have a look at which areas you're thinking you need to work on first, if maybe you're not a 6 out of 6. If maybe you're not a 6 out of 6. And of course, if you prefer not to say, then thank you, John. So 4 out of 6 for John. John works at Mitsubishi Pen Company. Hi, John. We use your marker pens. There's a little plug for you. Thank you very much. A 4, yeah. So some work to do in some of the areas. 3 out of 6, Bertrand. Thank you. Oh yeah, Peter, as an interim, that's really interesting. You've got to get up to speed with quite a lot, quite quickly. Absolutely. Yeah, Jonathan. Um, at USpy, we do talk values all the time, actually. Yeah, and a four again. Yeah, and Matt, start with values. Brilliant. So hopefully that's given you some food for thought around that get clear element of our four-step leadership process. And maybe some food for thought about where you might want to think about focusing if you want to get even clearer. So let's move on to the second step in our process, which I don't know whether you can see that there, says get going. So what's included there when we're thinking about our get going, and what does it even mean? Let's have a look. Okay. Okay. So one of the things that sometimes happens for us at USpire is that we're asked to run something like negotiation skills workshop as a team development workshop. And one of the things that often happens is that when we ask lots of questions in our discovery sessions and the chemistry calls, we find that actually it's not really the visioning part is not really clear. So it's not really clear what negotiations are required or what the level of negotiations, for example, price is required, or indeed potentially what strategy the team should be working on that they then need to plan their negotiations on, or what they're actually selling and at what to whom. And what that shows is that actually negotiation is not a mobilizing, not a mobilize, it's not actually a mobilizing activity. Negotiation is actually in the next step, it's developing. And what needs to happen often with our clients is that they need to be really clear about vision and then mobilize with the basics to make sure people have got going. So what happened at Big Bus Tours? So what happened at Big Bus Tours as a result of developing this vision was that the team made sure that everybody in the business was really clear about the vision. And it's kind of in all the training documentation, made sure that everybody's really, really clear about the vision. They actually also created a mission, which I also really love, actually, to inspire their spirit of adventure, and then trained and role modeled brilliant customer service, fantastic clean vans, buses, and everything that all of those little building blocks towards mobilizing, towards being the number one thing to do in every world famous city. They gradually mobilized by training, making sure that everybody's clear about their part in the process, giving valuable feedback when not. They created mentors so that the supervisors had a manager mentor so that to help them and share their experiences. In the mobilizing stage, it's important to have a mentor to do that. And the really important thing was to role model that behavior of customers first, tourists first, and we need to make sure they come back to us in all those famous cities. So I have asked another Steve to come and join us, coincidentally, another Steve to come and join us. And I'd like to ask Steve in a moment to share how he has mobilized a sales team. And Steve, I met Steve at the British Medical Journal when we were doing some work with Steve quite a while back. And so I think, Steve, you're going to tell us a story about mobilizing for the Neurosurgical Atlas. You better tell us who they are first.
That's correct. Thanks very much, Amanda. Yeah, delighted to join everybody on the webinar today to provide a brief overview on my experience regarding step two of the commercial leadership process, mobilizing growth. So as Amanda said, my original sales leadership experience started at the British Medical Journal. I worked there from 2006 through to 2022, and I was leading the institutional sales team for academic and healthcare sales across the portfolio of nearly 100 journals and also several databases as well. For today's example, though, I wanted to highlight how I put the mobilizing structure into place during my most recent role, and that's at the Neurosurgical Atlas. So the Neurosurgical Atlas is a US-based not-for-profit organisation, and I was global sales director there until late 2024. The actual product itself is a gold standard online training and medical education resource for medical students, for residents, doctors in training, as well as experienced neurosurgeons who want to learn new techniques as well. So this mobilization stage is all about getting started with an agreed sales strategy, making sure that the team members are on board with that, they're happy that they know what they're doing and what's expected of them, and really importantly, providing the skills and tools to achieve it together as a team. So Neurosurgical Atlas had been freely available with a personal registration for over 7 years, since 2016. And my task was to introduce a paid subscription model from April 2023 for healthcare systems around the world, so mainly hospitals, hospital trusts, and also academic institutions. And the main reason with it being a not-for-profit organisation was to generate a secure, sustainable revenue stream and to shore up the future of the resource. But at the same time, really important to be generating growth internationally. And we had a vision. Our strategy was to get to $1 million of revenue in just 9 months of active selling, which was quite a big ask from a freemium model previously. So when I joined, I also had a sales and operations director working with me internally. And this was really great for ensuring that the systems were robust. The technical side of the product would stand up according to current data standards, and also service levels that are required for modern information systems at this point in time. However, the unusual aspect of the role was that the sales team was entirely remote. So we were a very small organization based in the United States. So the decision was made to work with an experienced, industry-leading European sales partner, and they represented a number of other publishers globally. So we collaborated with them in all regions outside of the US. The planning stage was undertaken over a couple of months. That was alongside my colleagues in the leadership team. And we put a detailed sales strategy together, which was signed off by the board for 2023 to 2025 inclusive. And that also then had an institutional pricing structure in place. So as part of the mobilization process, I needed to ensure that the sales partners, regional directors, and the sales managers themselves at the coalface were fully trained on both the product itself, as well as the selling style that we felt would achieve the best results. So in this case, we were very much looking at consultative sales style, working jointly to find a solution for the customer. All the managers were based in their local territory. So for example, Southern Europe, Germany, Asia Pacific, and Latin America, with me based here in the UK. So the training was achieved with one-to-one product webinars and with personal calls between myself and each sales manager. There were around 17 to 20 of those sales managers in the global team. And those calls took place weekly at least. The KPIs were very clearly laid out, mainly relating to the overall growth strategy expected from the 3-year sales strategy. And the KPIs were mutually agreed by the sales partners' senior management. And importantly, they were understood by the individual members of the sales team. They also had the added incentive of commission to be earned on each new sale as well. So regular feedback was provided at every possible opportunity by both myself as the Neurosurgical Atlas sales director, as well as the regional directors from the sales partner organization. We had monthly calls, we were checking progress towards the agreed quarterly targets, and we wanted to ensure we were still on track with the KPIs. So the next part of the mobilization stage is mentoring, and that plays a key part in creating a fully functioning and effective team that can achieve the targets expected. In my opinion, I think it's preferable that for a successful sales leader to be considered a player manager by their team. The team then appreciates you're fully aware personally and understand the daily challenges that they're facing in the markets themselves. I think managing your sales team with integrity is vitally important to mobilize them effectively. It's really important you're seen as trustworthy, reliable, tenacious. This goes back to the honesty we talked about in the previous example. I think at all times looking to manage the expectations within both the sales team and the leadership team on a realistic basis as well, managing internally and externally, however hard that can appear at the time. Clear and honest communication is also essential as part of the mobilization stage, ensuring that's diplomatic and it's appropriate depending on the local region, but try not to leave any of the situations and the instructions hazy or unclear. I think for me, the key message is, from my experience, certainly as a sales leader, is always lead as you would want to be led. To be a positive role model is crucial to achieving the success and the growth expected by your organization and ensuring the team members are fully committed. It's really vital to keep the sales team 100% on target regarding what is expected of them. But I think at the same time, looking for them to remain enthusiastic about the often challenging sales environment that they face in the markets. So that's my approach to the mobilization, and a specific example there from my most recent role. I'm pleased to say we did achieve the $1 million in the 9 months of trading that we had. So that was a huge team effort to get that over the line. And yeah, I'm very happy to answer any questions as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. I've got a question for you, Steve. How did you manage remotely? So leading globally, remotely, I guess, from your loft office there.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Funny, isn't it? I think before COVID, I had always considered myself to be a sales leader that wanted to be in the office. So at BMJ, when we were working with you on our sales academy and getting people motivated and mobilized, it was very important to actually be there in the office. COVID gave me a whole different perspective on that, and I spent my last 2 years at BMJ working remotely, and I think that really helped me with the transition into Neurosurgical Atlas. Every other person in the organization was based in the States,
right.
and include all the leadership team. So whenever I was having a board meeting, the board meeting would often be at midnight UK time. So it was a question of sort of saying goodnight to the family, getting a coffee, and working from midnight to 1:30 on a board meeting, which was very bizarre. Working with the teams, though, I think it was the most important thing was that personal contact, to make them feel that you were connected at any time, to make them feel that you were available for them to reach out remotely. It was never a problem to have a call, to discuss something on a chat, or to say, look, let's just hop on a video call. I wanted them to feel that was okay. And with the time difference as well, obviously in the UK, I was slap bang in the middle of US, Europe, Asia. So I really worked hard to make sure that in the morning I was clearing my my messages and my emails from the night before would have come in from the States and Asia. Then I was working very much from midday until about 6 o'clock as a live period of 6 hours with the organization and with the sales managers. And then, although I was generally taking the evening off without any problem, and the organization was very good about that, obviously I would come on if there was a particular deal we were trying to close, or we had a meeting, a leadership meeting, then there were always exceptions. But the team, I think in the post-COVID world, it's much easier to manage people remotely now than it used to be. I think people are a lot more open to it, and they understand the challenges, but also they appreciate if you make yourself available.
Yeah, absolutely. And to being, as you called it, a player manager, you kind of got to be on the pitch at the times when your teams are on the pitch.
Yeah.
I think there's a question in the chat from JB Jonathan. from you, Spire, about what do you mean by diplomatic exactly? What were your challenges?
Yeah, I think I was meaning that particularly from an internal point of view, with the way that you manage those realistic expectations. I think realistic expectations can often be seen as negative connotations. It can be seen negatively within an organization. So managing those expectations, particularly upwards, is really important to do that diplomatically, but to say, you know, this is my realistic view of the situation. But I think doing that with the sales teams as well is just as important, to say, here's what I actually think we can achieve realistically. I guess the other thing I was talking about there was to do with the local variations, you know, being very aware that when you're dealing with international sales teams, you've got whole different sort of outlooks and perspectives, and you've got to be very aware of that when you're effectively managing a sales team that might be based in Singapore, for example, or based in, you know, Brazil. You've got to look at those cultural aspects and be very aware of that, and be very diplomatic with having like a more general approach to how you might answer a question or how you might put something across.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that story, and
No
congratulations,
worries.
Million, in a not-for-profit business. If anybody's got any other questions, Steve, and both Steve's actually, please feel free to continue to answer those by chat. And one of the things that they did at Big Bus, from a mobilizing perspective, is be really clear about the levels of skill. So they created some skill levels here called working towards, working well, and working wonders. I particularly like that one. And created steps, levels of skill that were intended. I mean, you would think it'd be really straightforward, selling tickets, you know, on the streets, but actually some really core competencies around things like where you position yourself to make sure that you're as visible and helpful to customers, and how you go about greeting somebody in their culture, in their style. Actually, there's way more to it than meets the eye. Having been on the streets in a number of those cities, watching and trying to do it myself, it's a massive skill. I tell you, if you can sell there, you can sell anywhere. So let's move on to our so that's we talked about visioning, get clear, and we've talked about mobilizing, get going. Then it's time to think about getting better. So the developing stage is all about getting better. And let me share my background that gives you some of the elements of that. Here we go. Yes, so best practice is a great example of best practice that was put into place at Big Bus. And interestingly, here's where coaching comes in. Because if mentoring is sharing experiences, the show based on demonstration, based on experiences in that mobilizing stage, coaching is around helping individuals and teams to be better themselves. So those skills as a leader of coaching and facilitation and managing and supporting people to be as motivated as they can be is in this getting better stage. And it's really important to know you cannot do any of this until you've created the vision and been really clear about how to mobilize. So I'm going to invite my next guest storyteller to join us. So Pippa is actually our managing partner here at Uspire, and our joint managing partner. And Pippa has had an illustrious career in both retail and in the supply side of businesses at Sainsbury's and Birdseye, actually, I don't think at the same time as Steve, or maybe, and also has run her own business, run and sold her own business. So Pippa, would you like to join us? Hiya. Oh, we're all matchy blue. Thank you very much. Okay.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah.
Hello.
So what story are you going to tell us about developing?
Well, I'm going to tell you a story about organic. Hands up if you remember the word organic foods coming into your life. Yeah, remember that period of time? Now cast your mind back when you first heard about organic. What was your feeling? What does it bring up for you as organic foods coming into the world? Any nominations?
Expensive.
Expensive. Alternative. Bit Hessian wearing.
Bit
Something
woo-woo.
that only, a bit woo-woo. Only some people wanted. Wasn't mainstream.
Short
healthy.
shelf life. Very short, very short shelf life.
Very short shelf life. So, I mean, that might have been, you've heard organic now, it's part of your language. If you roll back 20 years, I'm going to say, that's probably when it first started coming into your horizons. As a buyer, it actually started another 5 or 6 years before that. As a buyer, can you imagine how exciting people were to have organic coming onto the radar? And that was one of my first areas of developing change, developing people and developing a whole new way of working. So I was a buyer at Sainsbury's back in the late 90s, and my naivety, I've done it many times in my life, my naivety said, here's a project, Pippa Dunford, here's organic food. And I was like, oh wow, that sounds good. Organic, brilliant. Yep. It was the poison chalice of which nobody else really wanted to take on. So I quickly learned that one. But if we go back to what was the vision at Sainsbury's, the vision was to become the leading organic food retailer. Very, very clear. The mobilization was very short. One person, go do it. Set it up for us. That was the mobilization. That was the investment giving. So what was my challenge? My challenge was, how do I bring organic foods into Sainsbury's different to what it is now and expand that range? We had 14 products in Sainsbury's at that time, and it was recognized that it was an opportunity to become the leading retailer. What did that mean? Oh my goodness, it meant working with every single buyer and persuading them to take on that short shelf life alternative, doesn't sell a lot, not going to enhance their category, not going to give them any more money, product that they needed to take on. So I quickly had to adjust how we worked to develop not new people, not people who had to get better, but develop the idea, develop the proposition, and develop the reason to put it into your range. And I would say in developing all of those best practice improvement coaching is critical. But the three you need are the 3 C's. Communication, tell people, inform people, update people. No one's ever said they didn't tell me enough, they didn't communicate, they didn't tell me too much, they didn't over communicate with me. The second C, coaching, working with them, enabling them to talk through what their issues are, and the collaboration, you're in it together. So what did this mean? So it was the first time the mobilization part of it was given the remit to try and work across the company. So, 18 to 20 departments in Sainsbury's to bring a range of products together in one space shelf in the store. So you're talking to a very profitable Coke shelving, which was generating a lot of money, and persuading them to say, can I have a little bit of space, please? And can I put my very trendy, upcoming, soon to be highly profitable, market leading products onto that 1 meter of shelf, please? And I'm going to make it look different to Coke next door. And all my buying team are not yet behind me to put their products in. So the communication of what we were doing, why we were doing it, what the opportunity was going forward was absolutely critical. And as buyers, we sell, and as sellers, you buy for sure all the time. So that was the communication element. The coaching part was the hardest part, for sure, but it had the best results. The coaching part enabled me to go around as a little buyer with that poison chalice that nobody wanted to talk to, nobody wanted to hear about. There was a bit of an edict that had to be, you just have to put some of these products in. So their arm was being forced a bit. So I had to coach them on what we were doing, why we were doing it, what it could do for them, how could they get a better price, how do they work with the organic suppliers, who frankly were 10, 15 years behind their mainstream suppliers. So it was harder work for less money that was doing not a whole heap of good for their category. So the coaching element was not only individual coaching of how we work together to get there, but the coaching as a group. So we always have some supporters, some good stakeholders, bringing the group together. And we're talking not just buyers, we're talking technicians, product development, things like that. How do we bring them together? Group coaching, solving the problem together. And that enabled us to start collaborating on how we share the poison chalice that was at the time. How do we each support each other and talk about it and make sure we're not on our own? Because nobody wanted it. As a group, we had to have it. So as a group, the collaboration that came through that was to get those products onto a shelf. I also learned the lesson of pushing water uphill in this one. And that really comes through from motivation. The motivation of that vision was there, that we are going to become the #1 leading supermarket for dealing with organic foods. That motivation of trying to push people into the right way through that communication, coaching and collaboration was absolutely key. Rolling on 12 months, what started off as a metre of shelf ended up as 16 metres.
Wow.
With nearly 450 products in a very short space of time, which enabled them to become the first organic supermarket with the thing. And the collaboration that became from that actually kicked off how category management within Sainsbury's started to then form as a cross-departmental, cross-functional way of working. So pushing water uphill and poison challenges always have a good result at the end if you do ensure that you communicate, you keep coaching your team, and you ensure you've got collaboration.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you so much, Pippa. Thank you. And tell me, I know, Pippa, that you actually opened your own organic supermarket. Was that before Sainsbury's or after?
It was definitely after.
After.
And it was, and actually organics was really just beginning to take off by the early 2000s. So I then came out of Sainsbury's and opened the first totally 100% UK organic supermarket.
That's
and
what
it's still going strong now.
Amazing. That's what I call self-development, right? That's what I call self-development. Right, just take a couple of moments. Thank you, Pippa. Thank you so much for your time there. Take a couple of moments. Of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements of getting better in that develop stage, kind of where are you as a business? I think we missed out the mobilize one, but hey, yeah, where are you as a business out of 6? And maybe which is the element as a leader that you feel like actually I could be better at, or I could be at helping my team to be better at. So yeah, let's have a look. I always think it's really useful to just stop occasionally and think, actually, which element could I be supporting my team to be better at of the process? Let's have a look where we got to. Yeah. Yeah, interesting, Matt. Matt Spencer, who is commercial director at Cafe Nero. Matt saying 4 out of 5. And the bit that's missing is how to share best practices across a massive estate of retail. One to think of. Cara Williams, who is sales director at Hobart, which are a industrial washing and equipment supplier, is saying 4 out of 6. Yeah, interesting. Succession planning, kind of, that is absolutely a development activity, right? It's not a vision, it's not a mobile, it's a development activity for the overall team. And then, of course, each individual needs to get into vision, mobilize and develop. Thank you. Thank you. Great. Okay, so let's move on to our final stage. And I'm going to ask Chris to release the one-pager into the chat as well, so that you make sure you've got that copied as we're speaking, so you don't miss that. Yeah, enable is got there. You know, if vision is get clear and mobilize is get going and develop is get better, well, enable is got there. Oh, and by the way, when you've got there, you might want to be going back around the loop. Let me just give you a couple of things that, so for example, Steve Thorpe talked about being a player manager in the mobilizing stage. In the enable stage, you're on the bench, Steve, because actually the players are enabled to do what they need to do in formation in the appropriate way. And it's a really important reminder to us that once once a team or an individual is enabled in the area that you are talking about when it comes to these 4 stages, actually it's kind of back off, allow them to flourish and to shine themselves. And when you've got people with high expressive energy, sometimes that's hard to just sit back, and think about what happens next, as opposed to getting involved in the nitty gritty when a team is already enabled. I just wanted to say a couple of things around delegation when it comes to the got there stage. I don't know about you, but in my career as a leader of people, there have been times where I've delegated when really I've abdicated. There have been times when I've delegated a task which actually the team were not ready for, or an individual wasn't ready for, because I hadn't been really clear about the vision of success, nor had I mobilized, nor had I developed through coaching. It was just right, get on with it. And guess what happened? The individual failed. I failed as a result, and actually it was a massive learning. It's a massive learning. So I think the main message from me when it comes to enabling is to absolutely make sure that before you delegate, you've been through those 4 stages. So I'll give you the example with big bus tours is that 9 years on, actually there are some supervisors on the streets. There is a supervisor on the streets in Dubai, a lady called Jennifer. And Jennifer came through. As I said, we were lucky enough to be refreshing some of the academy training last week. And Jennifer came back into the room as a supervisor. She's actually now their operations manager. Most have been promoted, which is very good to see. And so she came back as the operations manager to refresh her training, make sure that the customer service element was great and that the driver's being trained in the right way and so on. And she came back and she absolutely got it. She's totally enabled when it comes to training. All she wanted was the new tools for the trade. Thank you. She's like, give me my stuff. Please give me my stuff. Yeah, asked a few questions and she's enabled. Whereas actually there are some of the cities who are brand new onto the big bus family who are not enabled. And actually they've now got a vision of success about what it needs to look like. But they are absolutely in mobilized stage. So mobilized stage needs mentors, needs support, needs help wherever needed, needs a WhatsApp group, needs some check-ins to make sure. And each of the cities, and indeed each of the individuals in the city, are on a different level of the vision, mobilize, develop, enable continuum. So listen, I think I've got 6 elements of being enabled that got there. And bearing in mind that once you got there, you're straight back round to vision because it changes every day pretty much. But in terms of got there, where would you say you and your team are right now out of 6? And that final question, what might be the element that you might want to think about in terms of what you might like to develop? Yeah, so that 3 out of 6. So consistency of leadership and consistency of team competency. Paul, thank you. Feedback and learning. So in that mobilize, develop, and the feedback to make sure that customer excellence is absolutely right. So listen, we are just about out of time. Let me give you a quick summary of our 4-step process for leading. And as I say, do grab that out of the chat. I think, Chris, we could probably add it through to the follow-up when we send the recording out to the people who've attended. Thank you. So yeah, which of the areas do you might need to work more on? Well, I've disappeared there. Visioning, mobilizing, developing, or enabling? Visioning, get clear, mobilizing, get going, developing, get better, and enabling, got there. It's been an absolute pleasure to share that with you. If you've got any questions at all, I'll be staying on a couple more minutes. And if you'd like a half-an-hour session to think about on some coaching around how you might get to where you'd like to be with your team, then Chris is going to recommend that you give us a call. I think you'll put that into the follow-up as well, Chris. And yeah, we'd love to speak to you. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for being
Brilliant.
here.
Thanks so much,
Bye-bye.
Amanda. That's fantastic.
Bye.